Hello everyone, Stable here, and today I'm going to talk about RBY UU instead of Ubers because we've got a underused tournament coming up, the UU Champions League, that actually has a custom avatar on the line. That's a first for RBY UU because traditionally we've only gotten inclusion in team tournaments that don't have those, like UU Blind Draft, UU FPL, and Blind Draft I think would have had a custom this year probably, but in the year it ran was before every forum got 3 customs instead. So this is an exciting time for RBY UU because Rap just got banned, Slowbro just dropped into the tier, and again, Rap just got banned, holy shit. So anyway, I thought I'd make a video rambling about thoughts on the tier, trying to create a little bit of a tier list of things, just making predictions about where they're going to end up. I subdivided it into a few different tiers and kind of picked out the Pokemon I want to talk about, which is these guys right here. I put like all the fully evolved or highest evolved guys and a few others on this tier maker originally, but I kind of sorted through and decided these guys suck. So I'm just going to talk about the ones up here. I'm going to try to keep this pretty low key and informal. Honestly, my voice is shot because I was on a festival all weekend and I'm still like only 80% recovered. I don't want to yap too much and mess up my voice. So I'll talk through these, try to take some hot take guesses at where they're all going to end up, and if they're going to be part of UU or not, and if so, like what they're going to do. And yeah, that's the idea for today. This will probably be a pretty long one because it is a lot of Pokemon to talk about, but hopefully not too long. And hopefully, because I'm keeping my voice a bit low, maybe this will be, I don't know, nice bedtime ASMR or whatever for some people. I've been told that my voice is pretty soothing, and so if it helps people fall asleep, I'm perfectly okay with that. But I don't have much more to say. I guess just, again, so glad that Rap is gone. Oh my god. And hopefully UCL ends up being a good tournament. I think people kind of don't know what to expect of the tier now that it's in this state. The closest tournament that we've had was the C plus tournament, which was the exact same legality as this, except that Jolteon was legal. But I think Jolteon was very warping. It made Golem and Nidoking much, much better Pokemon, and that has a lot of effects down this just downstream. So I'm gonna hop into this. It is a little bit messy because like a lot of Pokemon's viability is tied together. Persian and Haunter affect each other's viability a lot. Golem and Dodrio, Golem and every electric type, Slowbro and grass types. Like, so it's gonna be a lot of guessing. But I'll start with the easy ones and then we can filter down to the ones that are a little bit tougher. So first off, without even thinking about it, I'm going to put Lapras and S. Like, let's just be real, it's Lapras. It has pretty good bulk on both sides. It has pretty good damage output because Stab Blizzard is messed up. And it in this tier, I think because of Lapras, you cannot be a water type unless you can beat other water types, which obviously it does because it has Thunderbolt. It's got like Body Slam for paralysis, it's got Confuse Ray, it's got Sing to get sleep off, and that makes it really good at exploiting stuff that it switches into. It's got everything but T-Wave and Reliable Recovery. If this had T-Wave or Recover, this would be banned to OU. Really good Pokemon, in my opinion, best one in the tier. Even as things get bulkier, I think Lapras is just never not going to have a place, and that's pretty easy. Another one I'm going to put up here is Hypno. So Hypno, not as bulky, not even close, but having Hypnosis plus T-Wave is just ridiculous in the first place. The stats are pretty passable. Like physical bulk's not amazing, but it's like enough to get some T-Waves off. Special bulk's pretty great. 115 base special psychic, pretty good attack. You've got some options with you can run like rest, you can run counter, you can run seismic toss for that last move slot. Any of that is going to do pretty decently depending on the team setup that you're going for. So not bulky, but being monopsychic is nice because, for example, I've got the calculator up as well, but not on the right gen apparently. Hypno. But like if you look at Hypno versus Lapras, I want to say head calc because it does like 30 to 36 with Blizzard. Yeah. So it's only a roll to 3 hit KO. It has to hit, of course, and Psychic drops would immediately make that not work anymore. If you get a drop on Lapras's special, that Blizzard starts doing 20 to 23.5, so that's not very impressive damage. So Hypno, one of the only valid Lapras switch-ins in the tier. Very happy switching into T-Bolt especially, but if you have to switch it into a Blizz, it's not the end of the world. So I think Hypno will be a staple. I think it's not anywhere near a mandatory bring, but it's hard to imagine Hypno will not be pretty good. The main thing that is throwing a monkey wrench in the tier is Slowbro, which I'm also going to put in S. And I think these are going to be the 3 most used Pokemon in the tier. I don't necessarily think that Slowbro is going to be as centralizing as people seem to think it is. I think it has a lot of problems, but it has a lot of upsides too. So first off, 95 HP, 110 defense is ridiculous bulk. That's more physical bulk than Lapras has, and that single-handedly restricts some of the most dangerous and unstoppable guys in the tier that have been dominating forever. Like if we look at Dodrio, which is the most damaging normal type in the tier. Body Slam, 82% chance to 4 at KO, and Hyper Beam maxes out at 49%. So Slam Beam is unlikely to take out Slowbro without getting a crit, which, to be fair, 3 crit chances at 100 base speed probably will. But that means Slowbro is an actual valid switch in. Lapras, you switch in, crit Body Slam into a high roll Hyper Beam could be a KO on Lapras. So you can lose the game for that kind of thing a lot easier than Slowbro can. Also on the topic of Slowbro, Kangaskhan, perhaps the most unswitch intoable Pokemon besides like Lapras itself. Not even a 4-hit KO with Body Slam unless it gets crits. So Slowbro is like the physical wall. The downside is you're losing out on Hypnosis and you're weak to T-Bolt and Razor Leaf. So I think there's an interesting dynamic between these 3 because of their speeds, 67, 60, and 30, where running all 3 on one team is basically asking to get farmed by either like Raichu can farm after Hypno goes down, Grass types can farm after Hypno goes down, and they're also not too bad at dealing with Hypno themselves because Razor Leaf will do a decent chunk. So I don't think you can run all 3 of these on a lot of teams. I think if you run all 3 of these, then you are asking for several different archetypes to potentially punish you. So I think like your last 3 have to cover them extensively, and that's pretty hard to do. And you're also putting a lot of weight on each one to check specific things if you do this, because like Hypno is really your only special attacker check here. It has to check every electric and grass type and anything with a T-Bolt or some other way to just do a lot of damage like that. Slowbro has to carry a ton of weight checking physical attackers because you don't want it to be all on Lapras. So I think using all 3 of these on one team can be asking for it, and it's going to be pretty tough to actually make that work. Another thing that's worth noting with Slowbro here is in this tier, you can't just run Surf and boost up with Amnesia and clean through even Starmie and Chansey and whatever here. Like, Surfing Lapras does 10 to 12%. So even at +4, it's a 3-hit KO on Lapras, while Lapras has been clicking T-Bolt on you 3 times and gets 3 more after that, you're going to get crit. And that crit's going to do 80, and you are going to go down. So Mono Surf, not really viable against Lapras. Mono Psychic, same problem, but for Hypno, although drops do help with that, and Hypno is much less of a threat to you because it doesn't get T-Bolt. But I'm going to show like how bad these calcs are for doing just raw damage. 10 to 12. So like you kind of want to run either both of them or Seismic Toss for consistent damage. You can use Slowbro to just get T-Waves and not really do any damage ever. That's an option as well. But setting up Amnesia here seems really hard because you don't have that same longevity of your support like Starmie or Chansey like you do in OU, where they sit around forever and they spread T-Wave to multiple guys. In this tier, you probably are T-Waving one guy, and then that one guy is coming in on your T-Wave over and over and blocking it until it's dead, and then the next guy takes a T-Wave. I don't think you're ever going to really get that much para spread through a full team for Slowbro to just get to set up and win, I do think there's still a place for that kind of win con Slowbro, and it's very hard to stop if it gets rolling. But it's a big ask to try to get that rolling. So I don't think it's going to be common at all. I think you're probably going to see a lot of Slowbro just being used as a temporary defensive check that tries to spread some para and a little bit of damage. And I don't think it's going to dominate the game at all. Not like it can in OU versus unprepared teams. Other Slowbro obviously also walls both Surf and Psychic. You can Amnesia up on it, but if it has Seismic Toss, it's going to force you to rest. And then something else can come in and threaten to T-Bolt crit you out of the game. Because Slowbro just misses out on having 400 HP. It gets 393, which means it's 4-hit KO'd by Seismic Toss, which means it's Rest Loop by Seismic Toss. So your best case scenario is you T-Wave the Seismic Toss Slowbro, you set up and you Rest Loop, and hope that when the Slowbro switches out to something with T-Bolt that you dodge all the crits and get to keep playing the game. That's too risky. So Seismic Toss I expect to see quite a bit of. I wouldn't be surprised to see like T-Wave Seismic Toss, one other attack, and then some tech move like counter. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Rest or Withdraw and these like more stally Slowbro sets as endgame win cons. Like I think you totally could run T-Wave Seismic Toss, Withdraw, Rest, or some ridiculous idea like that, and then just if the opponent runs out of T-Wave or sorry T-Bolt clickers, you slowly win the game, assuming they also don't have rest clickers to rest loop your Slowbro. So I think Slowbro is really cool in that it has a lot of options in this tier. It is not the singular set guy that it is in OU, and it actually gets to use a lot more of its move pool. I'm interested to see what it does, and I don't think it'll be broken, but I also don't think it'll be like dominant in the first place, but it'll be good. It'll be very good. Being able to have a consistent physical normal check that actually can switch into them once or twice and get a T-wave off seems pretty good to me. Main problem I think is it really lets Lapras in, and Lapras gets to go ahead and click Sing in its face, and that really sucks. So I could even see it not being an S and actually going an A, just because letting Lapras in like that is really bad, but I think it will be very powerful in mid to late game scenarios, depending on exactly how the game ends up getting played. Who knows? This is a confusing tier now, but in a good way. I think this is actually going to create a lot more depth in the team building, instead of just pack a bunch of fast guys so you don't lose to Tentacruel. Speaking of, why don't we talk about Tentacruel? I think Tentacruel is going to suck. I think it's going to drop to NU. I'm going to put it in C because I do think it still has one thing going for it, which is it's got mix-ups with Swords Dance. The problem is Swords Dance Tentacruel after Swords Dancing, it max rolls 48% on Slowbro with +2 Hyper Beam. So the damage isn't really there. But you have 120 special, Surf does like 17 to 20% to Slowbro, so even then you can force chip on it. And it's that chip is almost as strong as Kangaskhan body slamming it. Not quite, but like forcing it in is still pretty okay. So I don't know. I think Tentacruel will have a small niche. I think you could probably lead it, but I think the days of Tentacruel running this tier are done. One funny thing in my mind is the fact that Tentacruel has Barrier. And I actually kind of wonder about the world where Tentacruel is running Barrier, Rest, or some other BS like that. And the advantage is over Slowbro is it doesn't need setup to do good damage with water moves, but of course you're still walled by waters. But like, if you barrier up one time with this thing, then bar crits, look how pathetic this damage is. This is like worse damage than it's doing to Slowbro, except that Earthquake obviously is super effective. I don't know. I think Tentacruel has some funny techs. I think we shouldn't just give up on it right away, but I also just cannot imagine it sticks to this tier. It really was a one-trick wrap pony. And without that trick, I don't think it's that good. But Swords Dance can be a good Lapras/Slowbro lure, force them to take that damage, and enable teammates that want them gone, like Dodrio, Kangaskhan, whatever. So maybe it's got something going for it still, who knows. It's not slow and it's not super vulnerable to electrics because of that crazy high special and pretty good HP. Oh, who knows? See. I want to talk about some of the physical attackers. I'm going to drag them up a little bit so that they're more in my view. So Persian, I think Persian's really good. Persian has a couple advantages. So first off, slash damage is pretty consistent. It 4-hit KOs Slowbro, but it does like 27 to 33, so it's very close to that already. T-Bolt does 31 to 37 to Slowbro, so like even if Slowbro's trying to rest loop, slash slash T-Bolt will force it to keep rest looping, and the T-Bolt, if it crits, is just like gonna KO the Slowbro. So you can use that slash to get consistent damage on it. Slash does good damage to Lapras, like almost the same rolls, so it's not like Lapras wants to switch into that. The only thing that wants to tank a slash is Haunter, or I guess like Golem can pivot through it and try to bait Bubble Beam. But otherwise, like this guy's just scary. And you're also at 120 speed, so you can like fish for a Hyper Beam crit if you're about to lose a matchup and just do 90% to something and take it out. Or sorry, it's got 115 speed, but you know, it's like barely any different crit wise. So it's the most damaging normal type at the cost of not having that crit high roll potential, except with Hyper Beam, which is very committal. But it's also not wallable except for Haunter, and I think that makes it pretty good. Like, I genuinely want to put it in S, with the caveat that while I think Lapras, Hypno, Slowbro will all be Pokemon with 60 to 90% usage, especially Lapras being on the high end of that, I don't think Persian will get anywhere near that high, but I think it'll be as almost as influential in the meta game as like these other guys. I think the meta is going to have to respect it a lot, which is also why I think I'm going to put Haunter up there. I think Haunter actually does a few really cool things, and while Persian is one of them, it's the fastest sleeper in the tier, never a bad thing. It's got Explosion, never a bad thing. Even if it's coming off a pathetic 50 attack, it's still going to chunk something for like half. I want to say that Haunter Explosion doesn't, like on Slowbro, it's not going to do half, obviously. It's going to do like 40 to 45, but versus everything else, even Lapras, it'll do a good bit more than that. Like, see, I think versus Lapras, it's going to do like 40 something, yeah. And obviously, it has T-Bolt, one of the stronger T-Bolts in the tier, like one of the strongest non-stab ones. I think it is the strongest non-stab T-Bolt in the tier, yeah. And surprisingly, it tanks Lapras Blizzard pretty well. Like 39 to 46 means it's only a 3-hit KO, so you actually can get entry on Lapras and threaten T-Bolt or Hypnosis. Nightshade does decent damage to Hypno. Psychic does decent damage to lots of things and threatens special draws, but I think probably Nightshade will be the standard move. But just these three moves that I have currently set on it are all very, very powerful moves to have in the current iteration of UU. The speed tier is pretty good. It is a pivot on Dodrio and Kangaskhan that can prevent them from landing their most powerful attacks and kind of force stuff like Drill Peck, like Earthquake, to let you pivot off them. If you get that free entry on Kangaskhan and you're desperate, you even get to click Hypnosis on it because you're faster than it. And it kind of helps fix the speed issue of running a bunch of Pokemon like Lapras, Hypno, Slowbro. So like it's a pretty good complement to them in addition to a good check to a couple of them. Main problems are, of course, Kadabra, Dugtrio, Hypno to an extent, although you're faster, so like booming it is not the worst outcome in the entire world. It sort of checks some other stuff, like Clefable and Dragonite's best options to hit it would be normal moves if it wasn't immune, and it tanks special moves pretty well, so it's like a semi-check to those. It's a semi-check to Electrics for the same reason of them not really having the best moves to hit it. Electabuzz can 3-hit KO and outspeed it, but otherwise, like if you take Raichu, for example, Raichu Thunderbolt is only a small chance to 3-hit KO. Granted, it's faster and has crit chances, but like that baseline is not amazing. And if Haunter is running, I'm going to put Psychic on the set just to demonstrate this. It's running Psychic, 4-hit KO, but any drop makes Haunter KO faster and Raichu KO slower. So Psychic still is a use case, that's for sure. And I think Haunter will be really good. I, again, don't think it's going to be as highly used as the first three Pokemon I put in this tier. And to be clear, I'm not ordering these tiers. It's just, this is the order that I'm talking about them in, and that's all. So I think Haunter and Persian will not have anywhere near the use of these first three, but it's still going to be a good Pokemon, so I wanted to put it up here. Simple as that. So talking a bit more about some of the physical guys, let's get to Kangaskhan. Kang, big stats, pretty decent physical bulk, not as big as Slowbro because you'd rather have more defense than more HP, but notably it does take 4 seismic tosses and still survive that. Speed tier is not ideal, but it's a lot better now that Tentacruel is dead. Stab, Body Slam, Hyper Beam are still amazing. The main thing Kangaskhan has over other normals is it gets access to a bunch of special moves like Blizzard, it gets Earthquake, physical move, but you know, it gets Surf for Golem. So between all those moves, like you've got some options. You can 2-hit KO Golem or Dragonite by packing their respective coverage. You 2-hit KO Haunter with Earthquake. You have counter to punish Persian or Dodrio for trying to be aggressive. You have counter against other Kangaskhan too. If you catch a Hyper Beam or something like that, it's a pretty good thing to send back. So I think Kang has some options, and I think that's the thing that makes it pretty good. I think I'm going to go ahead and put it in A. I think the addition of Slowbro and Lapras to the tier is pretty bad for it. Lapras just straight up 2-hit KOs it and tanks it pretty well, but on the flip side, Kangaskhan can just slam beam it and do like 65% and be pretty happy to have chipped Lapras that badly. And Lapras doesn't like switching into it. Slowbro is more the problem in my mind, and that Slowbro can come in, T-Wave it, and then just sit on it. Of course, if Slowbro is doing that, it's inviting in Electrics and Razor Leaf Clickers when it clicks Rest to try to loop Kangaskhan, but it does loop Kangaskhan, and that's pretty scary. That you can just get your Kangaskhan T-Waved, and then Slowbro can come sit on it for the whole game as long as the other team has switch-ins to handle your Electric and Grass types. So, I do think Slowbro outlasts it, but I do think it's pretty forcing, and it makes Slowbro have to risk a lot to try to neutralize it, so I'm going to put it in A. I'm not going to put it in S. No, I'm going to put it in S. Kangaskhan's still really good. It just forcing Slowbro to come in and try to block it can be really, really punishing, and Slowbro doesn't have that much spare health to play with because of its horrendous speed. Once you get even kind of low, someone just hyper beams you for 40, and that's the end of Slowbro. So I'm gonna put it that high. So let's talk about Dodrio, last of that like normal type trifecta. I actually kind of want to put this in S2, but I'm realizing maybe I just start putting some of these normals down here. I'm gonna put it in A. I think I'm willing to put Haunter up as high as S because I think Sleep Pressure is really good, and because of the role overlaps, like you can replace Hypno, you can replace one of the water types or something because of the immunities and status conditions that you get from Haunter. The normal types I think just go here because they all have their own individual weaknesses that are pretty relevant. So for Dodrio, the weakness is you're completely walled by Golem, which is the best attacker in the entire tier in terms of raw damage. The upside is you have the highest damaging normal moves in the game. You have pretty great speed, you have agility, you have Drill Peck to hit Haunter. So like Dodrio is going to do the same thing it's always been doing, and it's going to do it well. It still gets one-shotted by Lapras, which sucks. But like Slowbro doesn't do that much damage to it. You can kind of bully Slowbro. The main thing is it's outsped by a few things that are dangerous to it, like Persian, like Rapidash. It takes a lot of damage from stray bolts and beams. Like Blizzard and T-Bolt are flying around everywhere in this tier and in this iteration, in my opinion. I say in my opinion because it's not like we've seen that many games to really know what's going to happen, but my opinion is Blizzard and T-Bolt will be flying around everywhere, and that makes being a flying type quite a bit rougher. The Dodrio defensive value is at an all-time low here, but offensive value doesn't get neutered that bad by Slowbro. Even if Slowbro's a consistent check, you kind of can trade your Dodrio to just kill it and get lucky with crits a lot of the time, which ends up giving you an even better result there. Maybe I actually just... I don't know, I'm going to put Haunter down here. I'm just going to create a clear separation. Yeah, so I'll do it like this. Haunter and A. And just ultimately all the normal types stay good. I don't think that Slowbro kills any of them off. I think Kangaskhan gets neutered the worst by it, but I think all of them have their own ups and downs, and it's going to be very dependent on how good their checks are. Like, I think Persian's check Haunter is going to be extremely prevalent. I think Dodrio's check Golem is not going to be as prevalent as that and has its own issues that I'll talk about in a little bit. Kangaskhan doesn't have any specific checks, but it's just like the weakest of the bunch overall in exchange for having the broadest coverage, which means it has no auto loss matchups. Oh, all pretty good mons. And now we'll talk about something that messes up Haunter, which is Dugtrio. So Doug is a lot worse off now. Slowbro is a problem, Lapras is a problem, but it's not as bad as it seems on face value. So first off, even if Slowbro is running Surf, which I think a lot of times is going to opt not to because Psychic's a higher upside move with fewer, like, I don't know, fewer resists, I guess, because Hypno only kind of counts until it gets dropped. And it's easier to just seismic toss it because it's not as threatening as Lapras. But even if it runs Surf, max roll 97 on Doug. Dugtrio Earthquake actually does pretty respectable damage to it because it's a stab Earthquake. And Doug crit rate is absurd. Versus Lapras, you do about 23 to 27 with Earthquake as well. So if it comes in on a crit Earthquake to absorb it, it takes a lot of damage. The main two problems I see for Doug in this metagame is one, you kind of have to click Earthquake because you need that damage really, really badly to justify why you're using a Dugtrio. If you are clicking slash, you're neutering your damage output, both in that you don't have that 4-hit KO roll on either Slowbro or Lapras, and you can't crit any higher than, like, slash crit does less damage than Earthquake non-crit. So you're really capping your damage to hit flyers. Clicking Rock Slide sucks ass. You don't want to click Rock Slide ever because it does 10 to 12 to Slowbro, which lets it in completely for free. And even versus most other things, that's pretty much a free entry, except for like Lapras, where it's the same thing as taking an Earthquake. But Doug really, really is pressured to click Earthquake, and that sucks ass because if the opposing team has a Dodrio, a Dragonite, a Gyarados, they can come in on that and get a free entry, and Doug is not very happy about that. That said, I think Doug's still pretty respectable. I think Stab Earthquake is a big threat. I think it doesn't have much defensive value now, but it still can catch a T-Wave. Like, Hypno does not want to fight a Dugtrio. Hypno, I'm just gonna go some calcs. So Psychic does 2-hit KO, but Earthquake has a pretty good chance of 3-hit KO, and Doug has a ridiculous crit rate, as we all know. I'm gonna go ahead and drop it in A as well. I don't think Doug is going anywhere, but I think it's not at the same peaks that it used to be at. Back when Lapras Slowbro didn't exist and everything was super frail. Still one-shots Haunter, still wins a lot of 1v1s versus frail Pokemon. So it's still a notable threat, but definitely has fallen off a bit. Now, Kadabra, another one of the frail Pokemon that used to be up top. I don't think it fares as well as Doug, but I don't think it fares as badly as Tentacruel. I'm going to go ahead and put it in B, I want to say. I think Kadabra has a couple of very cool traits still. The big ones are that Psychic from it does like 50 to Dugtrio, to Dodrio, to Kangaskhan. I think it comes just short on Persian. Let's see. Yeah, 43 to 51. So just short of the 2-hit KO rolls on Persian, which is pretty bad. Like, Persian farms Kadabra because Slash does like 78 to 90 something. Yeah, 78 to 92. So it's not an ideal matchup there, but I think the big thing about Kadabra, it's pretty hard to put Hypno and Slowbro on one team. I think that's a very big ask in terms of having too much slowness on your team and a lot of demand to check physical Pokemon. If you run both of them, you're kind of suggesting either A, I'm going to run Lapras and my team is going to be really slow and take lots of stray hits all over the place, or B, I'm not going to run Lapras and then I'm not running Lapras, which is a really good Pokemon. I would much sooner drop either of the other two in most cases. But I think Kadabra is only really contending with one Psychic type on most teams, and the nice thing is, if that Psychic is Slowbro, then between Psychic and Seismic Toss, you're actually putting a fair bit of pressure on it to rest, and that helps enable your physical breakers quite a bit. So you could use it like that and just use it to push that damage. And it's really good at keeping out sleepers like Haunter or what have you if the opponent's not relying on Hypno for sleep, if their sleeper is a grass type, or Hypno, or Lapras. None of them really want to try to sleep Kadabra. It's way too risky. So if it's Hypno, you're going to bait it out and chip it down, and it might even win because Hypnosis is so inconsistent. You've got some niche options like Counter and what have you. You, of course, have Recover to sit on Hypno forever in most cases. And just being able to revenge kill Dodrio and Kangaskhan is really powerful. So I don't think Kadabra is going to become bad. I think it's going to become more niche, but it's still going to be in the tier. If this drops to NU, I don't know what is wrong with us if we let that happen. It's clearly still got to use. So I'll leave it in B for now. And let's talk about Dragonite. Dragonite, you would think would become a lot worse without Wrap, but it's been shown time and time again in different metas that Wrap is not the key to Dragonite's success. It's just one more tool in its arsenal. It would love to have Wrap here. Wrap in the Lapras Hypno Slowbro meta would be ridiculously strong. But even without it, like I'm thinking back to UU Blind Draft 1. Finals, I played versus Amaranth. I brought Dragonite both games, and I ran Agility both times, even though Wrap was legal. And in RBY UU at the time, there's a very old complex ban that banned using Agility and partial trapping on the same set. So if you ran Agility, you were probably running Agility T-Wave 2 attacks or Agility and 3 attacks. I think I ran Agility T-Wave 2 attacks both games, but I might have run 3 attacks in one of them. Anyway, Dragonite completely wrecked Amaranth in both of those games. No disrespect, Amaranth's a great player, but Agility Dragonite is that devastating. And as soon as it got the setup opportunity, it just tore through like 3 Mons each game. So Dragonite's not going anywhere. First off, look at these stats. Look at its move pool. It's not going anywhere. This is such a good Pokemon still. It did not become bad overnight because it lost Wrap, it just changed. First off, Dragonite really, really makes the opponent want to answer it with one of Lapras or Haunter. There's not really many other Pokemon that are happy switching into a Dragonite. Haunter, sure. But if it takes a T-Wave, then Haunter becomes a much less effective Pokemon. It's much more scared of a million things like Slowbro, like Kangaskhan. And Lapras, if it's coming into Dragonite, well, like taking T-Wave is already not something you're happy to do. It's just sucks getting that inconsistency added on. But beyond that, Knight gets Thunderbolt. And Thunderbolt off 100 special has a 57% chance to 3-hit KO Lapras and crit chances. So even then, you bait in Lapras, you T-bolt it on an entry for a third of its health, and then you very heavily incentivize it to click Blizzard. Because if it doesn't, and you're an asshole and you call them on that and you Thunderbolt again, the Lapras is down to 30 or 40% at most, and the Dragonite's still alive. So like D-Knight can call it out for not blizzarding, but if it blizzards, you are giving yourself easier pivots into Lapras and Slowbro. So I think Dragonite's very, very forcing in that way, and that makes it a really, really good Pokemon, like to the point that I want to put it in S, but I'm going to put it in A, because again, I'm just going to make a distinction here between these two sets of Pokemon. But like it's got that, it's got Blizzard, it's got the strongest Body Slam and Hyper Beam of any non-normal type, and even stronger than normal types like Persian and Clefable. Like Dragonite Hyper Beam hits harder than Persian Hyper Beam, to give an idea of how ridiculous this is. The only things it's weaker than on the normal type attacks are Kangaskhan and Dodrio. So it's just got all these moves. You can run Surf for Golem, you can run Blizzard for Golem, and also cover Dodrio and Grass types. You have Thunderbolt for all your waters. Like, it just has every coverage move and agility and T-Wave. It's almost a perfect Pokemon despite this loss of Wrap. So it really lives up to being like the one dragon in RBY, and I think anyone who thinks it's going to drop out of the tier is off their gourd. Still really, really good. So I don't know what I want to talk about next, but I'm going to go to maybe Gyarados, because Gyarados and Dragonite often get mentioned in the same breath. They're both flying types. Dragonite also, pretty good Dugtrio check, and that's pretty notable. It can emergency switch into stuff like Persian and T-Wave them if necessary. I don't know, he's just got a lot going for him, and he can probably 1v1 Slowbro, because Slowbro is probably not going to fit Ice Beam or Blizzard on the set, let's be real. I think D-Knight's got a lot going for it. Gyarados is kind of in a similar vein. Like, if you look at the stats, look how similar that is. It gets a little more HP, a little less defense, a little less attack, one more point of speed just to outspeed Dragonite and beat it with Blizzard. But Gyarados is pretty good. I said before, like, Lapras is a water that beats waters. I think that's essential in this tier, that you have to have the coverage to beat other waters. Gyarados does. It has Thunderbolt. That Thunderbolt does the same damage as Dragonite's Thunderbolt to Lapras, so 30 to 36, except now Lapras Blizzard is not an OHKO on Gyarados. It's a 2-hit KO. Or sorry, no, it's a 3-hit KO, and Thunderbolt's only a 2-hit KO. I want to say Thunderbolt does about 68 to 80 to Gyarados, so you don't one-shot it. And again, you have this problem of Lapras being super, super pushed to click Thunderbolt, because it has to click Thunderbolt, or Gyarados is going to beat it for trying to predict. So Gyarados, better at beating Lapras than Dragonite is. Weakness is much more manageable because non-stab T-Bolt is much easier to switch into than stab Blizzard. It baits these T-Bolts that you can switch into with Hypno, with Haunter, with Kadabra, with electric types. So it baits the right moves from Lapras, and it has all the same coverage with Blizzard, Thunderbolt. You have slightly weaker Body Slam, slightly weaker Hyper Beam if you want those. There's really two things that hold Gyarados back in my mind. The first is you don't 2-hit KO Persian or Kangaskhan unless you run Hydro Pump instead of Surf, and that's introducing Hydro Pump accuracy to the mix, which sucks. The other thing is you don't have T-Wave. So if not for those, I would say Gyarados is the better Pokemon. It also doesn't have agility, which kind of sucks, but I think agility is going to be pretty hard to set up in the tier as things currently stand. So I'm going to give Gyarados a solid B, but I'm not willing to give it an A because no T-Wave is a pretty huge loss. Ultimately, if not for that one thing, I think I would probably put it in A alongside Dragonite, but I still think it's a very good Pokemon and people shouldn't sleep on it. And now that we're talking about Gyarados, I want to talk about electrics because we've been talking a lot about water types and how good electrics are at beating them and whatever. I'll throw Magneton up there, why not? Okay. So we have a few here. There's going to be a lot of competition between mainly these three, Raichu, Electabuzz, Electrode, in determining what's going to go on this tier. They all have different upsides, but I'm going to start with Raichu. So Raichu, more recently, started to be considered the UU instead of an NUBL. The big thing that Raichu has over the others, well, there's really a couple of things. So Agility and Surf are the big ones. Agility, Electabuzz doesn't have that. Surf, none of the other ones have that. So Surf OHKO's Golem, 2-hit KO's Dugtrio, and that's about the extent of it. So Raichu still only has electric plus water coverage, which means, like, for example, grass types wall it. And its damage output isn't particularly impressive. Like, if you look at Raichu versus Lapras, you don't even 2-hit KO with Thunderbolt without getting a crit. And Blizzard actually just barely misses the 2-hit KO back on Raichu, so at least it's got that going for it. Raichu surprisingly actually does more damage than Electabuzz on the physical and special side. It has 7 more attack and 5 more special, so it is slightly more damaging. But it also is 5 points of speed slower, and that means you speed tie with Dodrio, which is really rough. You speed tie Tentacruel if that ever sees any use. So speed tier is a little bit messy. It's the worst of the 3 main electric types that we're talking about here. But it's still good enough for most situations, even if losing a tie to Dodrio means you're getting Hyper Beamed in the face for a zillion damage and dying. Body Slam, Hyper Beam coming from this aren't the weakest, but you do have this problem of like Hypno switching in pretty well to Raichu, Haunter switching in pretty well to Raichu, even Dugtrio kind of switching in well to Raichu, although to be fair, Dugtrio Earthquake does not one-shot Raichu. The big advantage is mainly come in the fact that Surf OHKO's Golem, so you're not a Golem free entry point in the way that the other ones are. How good Golem is directly going to be the main thing that decides how Raichu fares compares to the other electrics. Now, I think Golem's going to be pretty alright, so I'm actually going to say Raichu becomes an A tier. Good Slowbro check, good Lapras, like, not check. You can't really switch this into it very well unless you're super desperate, but I think it'll be a good Lapras answer and good help to keep the pressure up on it. I do think it doesn't really do enough into normal types, into other things that aren't weak to T-Volt, but it manages just enough. T-Wave, Agility, Thunderbolt, Surf, Body Slam, Hyper Beam, like it's got a few options for how you want to fit its role into the team. You can go a little more physical with Slam Beam so that it can take out Hypno and enable other stuff, maybe even a second Electric. So I'm going to put it up in A. I think it's pretty alright. I think it'll do pretty alright. But a lot of that really hinges on how Golem does. Electabuzz. I think Electabuzz is actually going to be the loser of the bunch. So, attacking stats are mid, bulk mid, under 5 speed does outrun Dodrio. And this also kind of matters with the fire types because the fire types have a bit of a similar thing of like Rapidash at 105, Ninetales at 100, Arcanine at 95, Moltres at 90. So Buzz does outspeed Ninetales and tie with Rapidash, but ultimately, like all the fire types that aren't flying types kind of beat the crap out of the electric types anyway, because they just do more damage. And Raichu has Surf, which also helps in those matchups, and Electabuzz just doesn't, so it can't even really do damage to them. Psychic is a cool coverage move. Like, this does hit Haunter for a 3-hit KO and a potential 2-hit KO on a drop. But Electabuzz is just really pathetic outside of this. I don't think it does enough to stay up here. I think this is the one that goes to NU, so I'm going to put it in C. I do think it still will keep a niche. I don't think that this is going to fall completely out of usage. I just think that it's going to be the one that loses because there's 3 electric types and someone has to lose. Maybe even 2 of them, but I think at least one has to drop. So my guess is it's going to be Electabuzz. It has some of the same tools, you know, like Body Slam, Hyper Beam, Counter. Pretty good tools. But I just don't see enough of a use for them. I think it's a very niche choice because there also is still another electric with Electrode. And Trode, obviously fastest Pokemon in the game, and it has Boom, which is one of the best moves in the game. And surprisingly, like, better bulk than the other ones, genuinely. Like, I don't know, I think it's, like, Electrode's bulkier than it looks. It's still not bulky, all 3 of them are not bulky. But Electrode doesn't, like, tank hits any worse than them, and Explosion is just really good. Being faster than Dugtrio is a big bonus. Explosion has a 33% chance to outright OHKO it, and then you have the 25% crit chance on top of that, which is also, of course, an OHKO. So Dugtrio getting in for free on Electrode is not as bad as it is getting in for free on the other ones. Raichu, like, at least has predictions on entry, but Buzz doesn't even really have that, except for getting a para slam on it. That's like your 1 out versus Dugtrio, and it's only 30%. Trode crit rate also means it's inconsistent, but in a good way. Crit Boom will OHKO most things in the tier, or at least come close. Should OHKO Hypno, I'm pretty sure. You don't match up that well against a lot of things, like versus Lapras, you don't 2-hit KO it with Thunderbolt, but neither do the other 2 stab electrics. But because of that crit rate, you can just randomly hit it for 70 instead of hitting it for 35. And that is a big upside because then even if you lose the matchup somehow, you enable something else to finish off Lapras. I think Trode is very scary in that way. Like, the damage isn't good, it's the worst outright electric damage of the 3. But because of those crit high rolls, you can just randomly hit, like, let's say Hypno. I'm gonna type that with the calc. Electrode versus Hypno. Like, it's a bad matchup. You do like 21 to 25 or something with, yeah, with Thunderbolt. But because of crits, a quarter of the time, this is just randomly doing 42 to 49 instead. So, like, even checks are just not happy to give Electrode more free attacks by switching. And that makes Electrode have a pretty solid niche to me. I'm going to put it in B. Between that and Explosion giving you free bailouts versus some of the stuff that would otherwise want to come in on it, I think it's scary as hell. That crit rate also makes it one of the best special attackers at beating Slowbro in an endgame. Even if it's boosted to +6 amnesia with 6 withdraws or something, like Electrode is the guy who still has a good chance of taking it out, aside from, Razor Leaf users. So I think ultimately, like, I think Raichu and Trode will stay in the tier. I think Buzz will drop, but still have some niche uses, especially versus Haunter spammers. And we've still got a solid 24 Pokemon to go through. What have I gotten myself into? Talk about the grasses, because we've been talking about the Slowbro and we're talking about electrics. The grasses, like, kind of fill in the triangle, but it's not a triangle of who beats who. It's the grasses beat both of those, and using too much of electrics or water types is inviting grasses to come mess you up. So Vic just dropped into the tier again. It actually dropped directly to NU because it's been an NU before. So it's in NU now, but it still has uses here, so we'll talk about it. Venusaur is in PU at the moment. So Victor Bell lost Rap, obviously a big loss, but I think it's going to be the winner of these two because ultimately it has way more attack, it has Stun Spore, and the bulk difference in the defense barely affects anything, the speed difference barely affects anything. Like Venusaur ties Dragonite, big whoop, it 4 times resists Razor Leaf, so what are you really doing here without Stun Spore? I really think it's just Stun Spore is the big difference. Victory Bell has it, Venusaur for some godforsaken reason does not. So Vic, dual status spreader, walls Raichu, forces Trode to boom if it wants to stay in on it. Razor Leaf is a nuke versus the water types in Dugtrio. It's not easy to switch into for a lot of things. Both grasses are walled by Haunter. Any flying type switches in pretty well. Like Dodrio can't get Paraslam by them if they run Body Slam or what have you. Dragonite, Gyarados switch in okay, especially Dragonite, Gyarados less so. Like they have pretty similar strengths and weaknesses, but Victory Bell having Stun Spore makes it an actual threat to Haunter and D-Knight and what have you on the Switch because paralyzing them is pretty good. Both Razor Leafs do about like 28 to 33 to Hypno, which means like you can be pretty forcing if someone tries to run all 3 of the slow fat Pokemon, then you punish pretty hard by getting these in because Razor Leaf forces Hypno to tank it and it's slower than either one of them. So I do think they're going to be okay. I'm going to say Victory Bell makes it to about a low B or a C, and Venusaur ends up being the one left behind. That's my guess, because Stun Spore is just that much of a difference. You can really fish it after Sleep Powder and get a lot of value that way. I'm going to say Vic wins this one, but I don't know if I believe Vic makes the tier. It could end up in C, but I'm going to put it in B for now and be generous. Who else have we got? We're running on the low end of the viables now, except I do want to talk about Golem. Golem, Clefable, these are 2 Pokemon I know are going to be viable in the tier, so let's get to them now. So, Golem. Golem is, as alluded to before, the hardest hitting physical attacker in the tier. 110 base power or base attack, stab earthquake, does a billion damage. Rock Slide is just short of a 2-hit KO on Lapras. Earthquake does a zillion to everything else, but unlike a Dugtrio, because you have that Rock Slide stab and way higher attack, you actually can click Rock Slide with this guy instead of being forced to click Earthquake and let Flyers in. So, like, let me show the calc versus Lapras first. 43 to 51. Like, holy crap, that's a lot of damage to a Lapras. Versus Slowbro. The calcs don't look as impressive, sure. Earthquake, not even a 3-hit KO, but consider that Golem's faster and has Explosion. That's pretty scary. This guy is really, really scary. The main problem is if Lapras ever gets in for free against it, that's a free sing click, pretty much guaranteed, because Golem gets fried by Surf, by Blizzard, by lots of things, by Razor Leaf. I think Golem is going to have a very, very hard time getting in this tier, except versus teams that are bringing like Dodrio. Even Persian's like not a good entry point. Kangaskhan's alright, but I think Kang's going to be running a lot of Blizzard, and that's not very ideal for Golem. But if it gets entry, it will do damage. If it does damage, That's pretty good. It's whereas Dugtrio lets Dragonite and Gyarados in because it does 25% to them on entry. Golem doesn't settle for only that much damage and instead does 47 to 55 to fucking Dragonite, which is a Pokemon with 91, 95 bulk. That's like not insignificant at all. The only things that switch into Golem Rock Slide are another Golem or Dugtrio, and Dugtrio after Rock Slide is almost an Earthquake range of Golem, and it's in range of like everything else in the tier. So there are no good Golem switch-ins except like kind of Tangela, who we will get to. I think Golem's pretty okay. I'm gonna put it in B, but I could see Golem being bad depending on exactly what the usual team comps are. If there's a lot of grasses flying around and a lot of Raichu, that's not good for Golem. If Electabuzz and Electrode find good niches, if Dodrio is everywhere, that's amazing for Golem. Even if Haunter is everywhere and it's forced to run Nightshade to hit Hypno, that's also great for Golem because Nightshade doesn't do that much to Golem. So Golem, I think, is like one of the most variable placements on this list. I could see it being an A rank very easily. I could see it being a C rank very easily, and it totally depends on what else settles around it. So we will see how things begin to settle. But I have faith in Golem. I am a friend of Mr. Golem. I believe that this guy has it in him to be really good, and I believe everyone should be like Golem. So that only leaves a couple of former UU guys left to talk about, and I'll actually just bring up everyone who used to be or currently is ranked UU up to here for just a moment. I can talk about each of them. Clefable. Clefable, in my eyes, is a little bit like Dragonite in that it has the broken Blizzbolt coverage, it has T-Wave, it has strong stab normal moves. It only has 70 attack, but that ends up with Body Slam Hyper Beam doing just a tad bit less damage than Dragonite. I want to say 130 or sorry, 70 base attack normal stab is about the same thing as 130 base attack non-stab. So Clefable's threatening as hell. It has counter, it has Body Slam Hyper Beam, it has Blizzard, Thunderbolt, T-Wave, and importantly, it also has Sing. And that's scary as hell, because Clefable just has the bulk to pull it off. The main issue, I think, for me with Clefable, no resistances and 60 speed. Being tying Lapras and being slower than Hypno is not where you want to be in this tier. So I think Clefable is going to be fine, because I think Clefable having a million tools is good, but I'm going to put it in B. I just think it's going to struggle, but it's going to be good enough to hang on to a spot in the tier by an inch. Again, this isn't ordered. I think Clefable has better odds of being good in this tier than Victreebel do, but I think it'll be fine, but I wouldn't even be surprised, honestly, if it just barely dropped to C and ended up giving up a spot and going back to NU, but still having a solid niche in UU. Tangela, I think, is dead. Where is Tangela? There. So you get a ground resist instead of a ground neutrality out of it. You get pretty good defense. So you like can tank Golem, but in exchange you do nothing. Like you have Stun Spore, sure, but you have no damage, so you aren't super worried about Tangela at all. It kind of is just if you're willing to take paralysis somewhere, this guy's not really threatening. I don't even think Tangela threatens Slowbro. I think Slowbro actually sets up on it even with Mega Drain. Let's see. Mega Drain, Mega Drain. So, Fort KO, like it's not pathetic, but in the things it's not super effective again, it's pathetic. So I think Tangela is gonna be one of those, like, I'm gonna put it in C. Actually, I'm gonna put it in D. I think it's worse than Venusaur. I don't see much of a reason to run this. I do think it has a niche. That's why I'm putting it in D instead of down with the not viable at all crowd. But I don't think it's good. I think speed tying Lapras and Clefable is not good enough for a Pokemon that is a pure defensive do nothing. I think the fact that it's nuked by Blizzard is just not good when you've got Dragonite, Clefable, Lapras, Gyarados all in the tier. I just don't think it does enough. It's walled by Haunter. it just doesn't do anything. It gets the moves off and then it doesn't do anything. Like you can use it as a sleeper, I guess. Yeah, no, I'm actually gonna bump it to C. I think ultimately getting consistent sleep powder stun spore versus a few different targets like Golem, Slowbro, maybe Kadabra, Dugtrio. Like you have a few targets where you'll get sleep stun off, and that's pretty okay, honestly. I still think it won't be very useful, but it compresses a bunch of things into one roll at the cost of being a complete no damage slot. So I'm gonna put it in C. I think it will drop, but I think it'll have a niche. Let's talk about Articuno. Articuno, former god of UU, banned, returned when Lapras returned. Slowbro dropping into the tier is the worst thing ever for it. Blizzard does about 22 to 26 to Slowbro, so you can break it, but that's one more thing you have to get through before you can set up your agility and sweep. Like everything in A's here is amazing for it except for like Raichu. It farms like all these guys. But I think that problem of having too much initial stuff to get through and then still potentially having to deal with like Electrode, Gyarados, Clefable, Kadabra, like there's enough stuff that can just slow it down a bit on top of the three at the top that all can slow it down a lot that I don't know if I believe in Kuno anymore. It might be the worst of the birds, and I'm actually gonna drop it and see. I think it's like the quintessential example of a C rank to me. Because to me, when I think of a C rank, I think Pokemon that punishes certain kinds of teams or glues together certain uncommon team styles. It's like a 5% usage Pokemon that really punishes people on certain tendencies. And that's exactly what I think Kuno is now. Even before Slowbro dropped into the tier, it already was kind of that more niche, punish specific styles. And like if you can bait in Lapras into a Lapras versus Lapras war and trade your Lapras for theirs, then you've just enabled an Articuno to come in and sweep. I think now that Slowbro is also in the tier, far fewer teams are going to be as vulnerable to this sort of idea, both because of Slowbro itself and because of the increased pressure to bring electrics and pressure to bring fewer things like Dodrio or what have you, uh, Dugtrio, that would get one-shotted by Kuno and help it set up these sweeps through Frialmons. I think it's a C rank. I think it'll punish some people, but I don't think it'll do what it used to at all. But meanwhile, Moltres might be the new Articuno. So Moltres, down in NU. Fire Blast on Slowbro, 22 to 26%, of course, but Lapras crucially doesn't wall it. So if we look at like Articuno versus Lapras, Double Edge, 6-hit KO, Hyper Beam, 4-hit KO. I mean, and Blizzard, of course, 11-hit KO, 12-hit KO. Moltres, 3-hit KOs with Fire Blast, and because of that higher attack stat, it's not even completely helpless in the Slowbro. Like, these aren't good calcs. Hang on, I need like Double Edge because Fire Spin is banned. Can't wait till we update the decks and fix all this stuff. But like this isn't bad damage to force onto a Slowbro, and it may not even be running Surf, in which case like the damage output is I'm typing is hard. Psychic. Thank you. Like that's not even a consistent 5-hit KO. That's crazy. So I think Moltres has a lot of potential, especially like if you get versus a weakened Slowbro and a team full of guys like Persian, Dodrio, whatever, Moltres might put out really high damage. Problem is, Articuno OHKOs a bunch of these guys in the A tier, like the ones that are weak to ice, which is, Dodrio, Dugtrio, Dragonite, and Moltres does not because they're not weak to it. So I'm gonna put Moltres in B, but it's a very iffy B because I think it is very possible that Moltres could actually end up being really blah. Anyway, I think it has potential, so we'll put it up here for now. Now, let's talk about Dugong, Vaporeon, Omastar really quick. These guys were all in UU for a long time before the advent of Lapras. I'm gonna save us all some time and just say all these I think are completely not viable now. I think that ultimately Dugong is completely worthless. Like, Dugong is the one I have the least confidence in. Same type as Lapras, but just worse stats and everything, worse move pool, just doesn't do anything. Goodbye. Useless. Vaporeon has some cool tricks. Acid Armor is cool, but mainly that's it. The quick attack stuff versus Wrap no longer matters because Wrap is banned. The stats are a little better, but like 60 defense still sinks it versus physical attackers. And if you want like a backup Lapras, you have Slowbro to do the same role of physical defense that Vaporeon would want to fill with Acid Armor, but without the setup. I'm going to say it's not viable here. It's going to go to NU. Almastar is interesting because the typing means that it does wall Dodrio. The problem to me is, look at this lineup of T-Bolters all over the place. Guys with Earthquake like Kangaskhan. I don't see why you'd want to run Almastar as a rock type over Golem when Golem's unwallable and Almastar is extremely wallable. And for that reason, down in the unviable dumpster you go. So I think these three are doomed to fall. At this point, what is our tier looking like? We got 3, 9, 10, 16, like 17 Pokemon currently in UU, and this is already optimistic. Several more of these will not make the cut, I'm sure. I'm expecting probably about 15 Mons to make the cut of UU in the next VR. And some of these Bs will definitely not make it. Like, I could imagine everything from about here on, like where Trode Kadabra are onward down, could end up being a C rank, like a high C. But we got one more guy who is currently in UU to talk about, which is Ninetales. Ninetales was a discovery of a couple of people, and I think I was the first person to bring it in a UU tour match, and that was a while ago in a different meta. What it did is it speed ties with Dodrio. It destroys it with Fire Blast, like it's a 2-hit KO. It tanks Slam Beam from Dodrio, 30% burn chance on Fire Blast. Pretty good special, so Fire Blast isn't something you're happy to switch into. Even Dragonite is unhappy because it could get burned and then it's getting chipped over and over. You have Confuse Ray to harass Haunter in the lead to stop it from getting off sleep. And yeah, like you're good into every lead but Tentacruel back in the older metagames. Now with Slowbro being in, I think Ninetales has become a lot worse. I still think it's got a place, and how much of a place it has depends on how much of a lead Haunter is, and how good baiting in stuff like Slowbro ends up being for getting sleep off. So I'm not super confident in Ninetales. I'm going to throw it and see, but I think it could end up surprising me. Ultimately, just depends on what ends up happening in the lead metagame more than anything. But that weak 76 attack makes it not very good at beating down Slowbro, even if Slowbro isn't running Surf. We've got other fire types that we might as well talk about while we're here. We've got the PUBL Rapidash. So you're giving away Confuse Ray and losing 20 special, but you gain 5 speed, so now you're just faster than Dodrio instead of being speed tied with it. You speed tie Electabuzz. You outrun Raichu, which can matter because it does have Surf. So you're giving up on Fire Blast being a big impact move by comparison, but in exchange you've got Slam Beam off slightly higher crit rate and like decently higher damage. You have agility if you get T-waved so that you can take that first KO and then push with another Hyper Beam or something. But like Rapidash damage output, I don't really believe in either. Rapidash, Slowbro, Body Slam 14 to 17. Like, this is not damage. You need crits for that to do a lot. Granted, if Slowbro does not have Surf, you can crit through it. So I do believe in Rapidash having a niche. I probably believe it has more of a niche than Ninetales, but I'm also going to put it in C. Arcanine was something that I thought about a little bit because Arcanine has agility and way better bulk and more damage than either of the other two. Like, same special as Rapidash, but all the other stats except for speed are better. I do think it gets sunk by a couple things. Being slower than Dodrio is not good. Being slower than Raichu is not good. The damage difference and the bulk difference don't really make that much of a difference. I don't think Arcanine is going to find a way up to UU. I think it'll be niche, and by niche I mean like D rank niche, not high niche. Who else do I have in here? Let's talk about a couple more of these. Blastoise, for the same reason as other waters that can't hit waters, unviable. Golduck. I'm actually going to talk about Golduck and Poliwrath together. So Poliwrath is a little bit interesting. This is the one time I think its fighting type is not actually like just a full detriment. Submission hits Lapras pretty okay. Let me see. Poliwrath. So kind of like an OU where Poliwrath is the super niche amnesia guy because it has amnesia, hydro pump plus submission to hit Chansey, which is like the only thing that's really stopping you from hydro pumping through everything. It can do the same thing here to Lapras, where you've got submission for Lapras, and that does almost it's like nearly a 2-hit KO's worth of damage. Of course, you get Thunderbolted and that sucks. You're weak to Psychic and that sucks. But Hypnosis means you do get the setup turns for Amnesia sometimes. You're faster than Hypno, you're faster than Slowbro, you're faster than Lapras. So like if you hit a Hypnosis, you can get that setup turn for Amnesia. And that effectively, unless you get crit, that negates your Psychic and your Electric weaknesses, which makes Poliwrath significantly better than it should be. I still don't really believe in it, but I'm keeping an eye on it. So I'm going to put it in D for now, but I am keeping an eye on it. I genuinely believe this actually could have a niche that matters. I'm just not a hard believer. It's still like if you run a set like that, you are still walled by Slowbro, and that's a big ask because you don't have any options that actually let you beat Slowbro. There's no move in your move pool that actually makes you beat it. So your best bet is if it doesn't have amnesia, I mean, and you get boosted, then Hydro Pump has a small chance to 3-hit KO Slowbro at least, but that's like the best you're getting. And of course, there's other psychic types, there's other T-Volters, and any of those critting you just ends your game immediately. So I still don't really believe in it. I think it's a very slow idea, but Hypnosis helps. Meanwhile, Golduck, I'm not even going to bring it up on the left screen because Golduck does not have Hypnosis, so how are you setting up? It does not have Submission, it does not have Psychic, so like it doesn't even have... It doesn't hit waters. It's a water that doesn't hit waters. That means it's pointless. Final water up here is Kabutops, and this one actually does interest me a little bit because what Kabutops has is Slash, and it walls Dodrio, so it does get entry points. It's not slow. One of the big problems I have with Golem, right, is like Golem is very slow, even if it's faster than Slowbro. You can't really run it as a complement. If you ran a team of Lapras, Hypno, Slowbro, Golem, you are running a team that gets absolutely farmed by Persian plus Kangaskhan because it has the coverage to hit everything there. And everything is just slower, so they get bullied relentlessly by those, by Dugtrio, whatever. Kabutops has 80 speed. It's not nearly as slow. The main problem is it's weak to T-Bolt. All the T-Bolts, the non-stab T-Bolts are still 2-hit KOing it. And that is a big ask for it to be able to still do something in spite of that. That said, versus Slowbro, Slash is a 4-hit KO. You have Swords Dance to set up Hyper Beam, and that's a big threat to Slowbro if Slowbro gets caught resting. Lapras doesn't want to switch in to Kabutops like hard switch because it's nearly a 3-hit KO with Slash. Like, I think this guy might have something, but water types that are weak, very weak to T-Bolt, like taking a 2-hit KO from it from non-stabs, just don't impress me very much, but I'm keeping my eye on him. He's not totally worthless for sure. Magneton is, I was going to say fourth wheel, but that just sounds stupid. It's like the fourth electric type. It doesn't do much. The big thing is it's got 70 speed, so it's faster than Hypno. So if someone's running this like Lapras Hypno Slowbro idea, maybe you run double electric with like Raichu plus Magneton, and Magneton has that huge 120 special, so you just do obscene damage. Like notably, unlike the other ones, this guy is actually 2-hit KOing Lapras, which all the other electric types are still failing to do despite having Stab Thunderbolt, which is just pathetic. So, like, that's pretty cool. It tanks Blizzard well enough to come in. I think it has use. I think it's going to be a very, very niche pick, but I think it'll punish these very slow teams where you can just run Magneton and know that, like, even Hypno does not switch into this well. Because, like, with other electric types, they usually don't even 4-hit KO Hypno. Magneton does 4-hit KO Hypno. That's a big threat. Any chip and that becomes a 3-hit KO, because look how close that is. Like, you need 15% on Hypno to guarantee a 3-hit KO with this thing, right? That's not bad at all. So, I think it's a D rank. I don't think it's anything amazing, but it's there. It's got some stuff going for it. Mr. Mime has T-Bolt. The problem with Mr. Mime is it is at 90 speed with 0 bulk, and that's all it's got going for it stat-wise. It's like okay versus Lapras and Slowbro. T-Bolt makes it something to consider, but like I'm gonna put it in D as something with potential, but something I don't really expect to blow up. That 90 speed is just so crippling. If it had like even 105 speed, I would be way higher on it. Raticate is like maybe the last particularly interesting one of the bunch to me. So Raticate stab normal moves means it hits Slowbro harder than like all the non-normal types, like harder than the fires, whatever else. 97 speed makes it okay in lead. And Super Fang means if you want to, you can't use bulk to stop Raticate. If you send Lapras or Slowbro to try to outbulk it, it Super Fangs them and they are no longer a check to anything else for the rest of the game. And that is a pretty good outcome of using Eradicate. It also notably has Blizzard and T-Bolt. Blizzard does 60 to 70 to Dragonite, so Dragonite is not a good Eradicate answer either. There just aren't good Eradicate answers once it gets in. The only downside to Eradicate really is just that 97 speed is just not quite enough. It is pretty cool that you outrun Kangaskhan, outrun Haunter, so you can even punish those. But you're slower than Dodrio, you're slower than Persian, you're slower than a lot of stuff that is just going to 2-hit KO you, and you're super frail. But outside of those matchups, I would say that Raticate is actually pretty punishing. I'm going to put it in C, and I really think this actually has the potential to be a B rank. I think this might actually be the best Raticate meta that UU has ever been. So I have some belief in the little guy. Now, almost to the end, I am very tired. Charizard, I think, is going to suck. The only reason that Charizard even makes the list is because it has Earthquake and Swords Dance. Not because I think it's going to click those, but because I think the threat of them goes pretty far. But it's another victim of the do 0 damage to Slowbro problem. And I think that that makes it unviable. It's probably like at least as good as Arcanine. It's faster than Arcanine at least. So I'm not going to throw it completely off the list, but I would say this and Arcanine are like the least viable guys in the D rank right now. Nidoking. Where even? He's in PU now, that's right. Nidoking, great coverage, terrible stats, terrible move pool. Or, sorry, not move pool, terrible typing. Horrendous typing. If it was just mono ground, this would be so much better for Pokemon, but because it's also weak to ground and psychic, it just where do you bring in the guy who's weak to ice, ground, water, and psychic in this tier? Please tell me. Look at these guys. Literally every single Pokemon in almost has a move to hit it. Lapras, Hypno, Slowbro, Haunter, Kangaskhan, Dugtrio, Dragonite, Raichu, Gyarados, Golem, Kadabra, Clefable, all these Pokemon have a super effective move on it. There's like 6 Pokemon here that don't have a super effective move on it, and even those ones, like Moltres, does a lot of damage to it. In return, Nidoking's damage is slightly higher than Dugtrio's, with Earthquake and mediocre on the special side. Like, I don't know. I don't believe in this guy at all. I'll put him in D. Potential, but like potential man, kind of potential. Porygon's weird. Like, I kind of see in a slower meta it having some usage, or or uses, maybe not usage. And as Bolt Beam coverage plus T-Wave and Recover, like these are the moves that you want to have in this metagame. But the stats are so bad. And there's so much T-Wave. But it does outspeed Slowbro and threaten T-Bolt. On Lapras, you sort of can almost kind of maybe slightly pretend to recover through its blizzards. No. I'm going to put it in D because I do see the niche. I think it punishes some extremely specific stuff. But I don't really believe in it at all. And Venomoth, decent sleeper. Problem is, you get sleep stun and then what? You're walled by Slowbro, you do no damage to anything, so I'm going to put it in C because sleep stun is pretty good, but that's literally all I can do. And that's about all I've got for talking about these Pokemon. So, what do I want to talk about at the end of the video really quick? I'm going to say one disclaimer, nobody knows how this is going to pan out. I'm expecting most meta predictions to be pretty far off. Here's like my final list for anyone who wants to see the whole list at the very end. Even center this. Look at that. I can do cool tricks now where I actually change my presentation is. Look at that. So, final list. I'm not going to do any editing on this. This is like very quick takes. I'm sure after 1 week of UUCL, my mind is going to change on a bunch of these things. But just like an initial mild temperature check, I'm sure even before week 1, I'll have some opinion changes. Beyond that, I guess like, comment, subscribe. I don't know. I actually have realized I like watching those numbers go up, even if I'm not monetizing any of this. It's kind of cool watching that people click the like button or actually say things about the videos I'm writing instead of just leave them on in the background. It's cool watching the subscriber number go up, so I would appreciate if you watched this whole like hour plus of me rambling about this, or if you've been watching the UPL videos, if you did those things. I'm never going to monetize this. It does not matter if overnight I woke up and 50,000 new people were watching this channel. It would kill all the joy for me in doing this if I were to monetize it. So I'm not planning to do that, and I don't like doing the whole like, comment, subscribe, blah, blah, blah thing, but I do like the numbers. So if you like me or what I'm doing, it would make me have a little tiny dopamine hit, and that's an encouragement to keep doing them. Beyond that, as I'm recording this, it's July 22nd, so the UU Cup individual is coming up in a few days, and I will be making sure that there's some at least speculative sample teams by that time. There's UUCL starting 1 week after that, and that'll be fun to watch. I'm going to commentate all those games. So if you like this, I'm going to throw this in a playlist. I'm going to probably talk about the draft pool of players a bit closer to the tournament and talk about my takes because some other people already posted their takes on forums about who they think is worth drafting and who isn't. So I might as well throw my hat in the ring with that as well. But I think that's everything I wanted to talk about in this video. And next time I see you all, my voice should be more recovered than this, so I will sound less gravelly. And I guess I'll see you in the next one. See you around in the UU videos or in the Ubers ones if you are also enjoying the Uber stuff. But goodbye for now.